News that impacts you and your community. 13 on Your Side Evening Plus starts now.
Breaking news now on 13 on Your Side.
After a nearly 2-week-long trial, a Kent County jury could not come to a verdict in the second-degree murder trial of former Grand Rapids police officer Christopher Schurr. Good evening. I'm Julia Gorman, and welcome into Evening Plus. The judge declared a mistrial this morning. We have team coverage today. We've had it all day long, breaking down what happened, and we're also hearing from Patrick Loyoya's family. We are going to begin with 13 on Your Side's Kiara Patterson. She is live in downtown Grand Rapids following protesters who are marching right now. Kiara, I know a lot's going on. What are you seeing?
Yeah, Julia, emotions are so high right now. As you can kind of see what's happening behind me, police have now arrived on the scene. Protesters are here gathered, marching, making their voices heard with chants and shouts. Demonstrators that are here are mostly all in support of Patrick Loyoya, expressing disappointment with the mistrial. They've been chanting for justice, showing solidarity, and demanding accountability. Many say they're standing up for what they believe is right and for the value of Black lives. There are also calls to push to fix what they describe as a broken system. The message from the crowd is clear. They want action and not silence. And there's probably over 100 people here gathered right now in the streets of Grand Rapids, protesting for change and chanting while police now have arrived on the scene. We'll keep you guys updated on what happens, but for now, live in Grand Rapids, I'm Kiara Patterson, 13 on Your Side.
Really incredible live video there from our Kiara Patterson. She will be working on a story all about the demonstrations that we're seeing today. She'll have that for us live tonight at 11 o'clock. And she'll continue to follow those protesters, those demonstrators, as they make their way through downtown Grand Rapids. Testimony in the Schurr trial started on April 28th, last Monday, with the case going to the jury just this past Monday. 13 on Your Side's Callie Lichter has been at the courthouse each day. So is our Riley Mack and our Josh Albertus. They're joining us live now. Callie, we're going to start with you with the prosecution's reaction to that mistrial call today.
Yeah, Julia. So we heard from Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker for the first time since this trial has started. You know, he expressed his disappointment. He said this wasn't the outcome that the prosecution wanted, and it wasn't the outcome that the Loyoya family wanted either. And really, you know, he talked about how he still has a good relationship with the Grand Rapids Police Department, but, you know, he wouldn't have pressed charges 3 years ago if he didn't think that they were necessary. He said that there was no political pressure, which, you know, led him to make this decision. You know, someone who asked that question to him about the political pressure was referencing other groups and organizations who claimed that this was only done because the community was pressuring the prosecutor's office. But Becker said, no, you know, there has been a lot of officer-involved cases where I haven't pressed charges. And he's like, I thought they were necessary here. So he addressed a lot of things in around, I believe it was like 13-ish minutes that he spoke in the media room for us today. And so I think we have a soundbite from what he said.
Obviously, this was not the, what happened today is not what anybody was expecting or wanted. We're hoping for a verdict, and I think the family, I don't know if they've talked here, but they're extremely disappointed, as am I. This was something we were hoping to get a conclusion. We thought we put a good case forward. Obviously, the jury thought differently. They were hung. I spent quite a bit of time talking with them. They're very open, and they're really a good jury. I mean, they paid attention. They took a lot of notes. They obviously were in there for a long period of time and took this case seriously. So this is, you know, this happens. This happens quite a bit in general cases, but especially if you look across the country, there's a number of police-involved incidents where it ends up in a hung jury quite a bit. So we always knew there was a possibility. It's a difficult case. This was not an easy case. This is not a simple case. So at this point in time, I'm sure the next question is, what am I going to do? And I'm not going to make a decision right now. This is something I'm going to take some of the jurors obviously wanted to talk more. They may be reaching out, so I'm going to talk to them and take a look at everything, and I'll make a decision somewhere down the road. I'm not making a decision today.
And Julia, that was kind of the big question on everyone's minds. You know, where do we go from here? There wasn't a verdict that was decided. You know, this was a mistrial. It was a hung jury. And so you heard Becker speak about it there a little bit. But really, he said we should get a decision and update in this case over the next couple of weeks. He said, you know, he doesn't want to keep the community waiting. People are very passionate about this case, as we've seen, you know, from Kiara's reporting just a couple of minutes ago. People are very passionate about this case on both sides. So he said, you know, it's not going to be June, so I could expect by the end of the month that we'll hear a decision from the prosecutor's office, and that could include, a retrial, offering some type of plea deal, or Becker could just drop the case entirely, Julia.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, Kelly, and you answered it right away, what the options are that we could be looking at. And ultimately, like you mentioned, we just don't know when we will get that answer. It's not going to be today. It's probably not going to be tomorrow. So we will, of course, keep folks updated as soon as we do know the answer to that question. And I want to continue now with our Josh Albertus. Josh, you focused really on what the defense had to say. We heard from Schurr's attorney, Matt Borgula, and there was certainly some passionate words that he had to say after we heard about this mistrial declaration today.
Well, there were certainly some important points, some telling words. I think one of the most important points that we heard, or seemed to be one of the most important points, was when Callie was talking about what the prosecutor had to say. The prosecutor really didn't allude much to what the jury may have communicated to them, but when Borgula went up to the podium, when he spoke to the reporters in the room, he claimed that it was communicated to them that many members of the jury were leaning towards an acquittal. But of course, for any of those verdicts, as we all know here, for a verdict to be reached, it has to be unanimous. So whatever the case may have been, it still did end up in that hung jury situation. But yes, as you mentioned, there was certainly some passion there as well. I mean, the defense is really waiting at this point, waiting to see what the prosecution is going to do, what the path forward is really going to be. And I mean, he was saying there, part of what he had to say, we have a clip I believe we're going to play in a minute, but something he had to say was that this is not winners or losers. A man died. This is serious. And so they're not claiming victory by any means. No one's claiming victory here, and it's not about winners or losers because someone lost their life in this situation. So there was certainly, as you said, some passion in what he had to say, and I believe we have a clip if we can play that to kind of contextualize what he had to say to reporters.
I do not think this case should be retried. I don't think it should have been charged in the first place. I think that it was clear, based on the evidence, that there wasn't enough to establish a charge in this case. I think there was a lot of evidence at trial that was irrelevant and that shouldn't come in. And so if there is going to be another trial, we're going to likely seek rulings from appellate courts as to what evidence is put before the jury. In particular, I do not believe that this theory that was sponsored by Professor Stoughton, how an officer can put himself in jeopardy by following what he believes to be poor policies of GRPD, where he loses the right to defend himself should he later be put in a position where someone is about to use, he's an imminent threat of bodily harm or death. I think that's absolutely wrong. I think the jury was confused by the fact that the prosecutor was saying that he cannot defend himself because he screwed up on whether or not he should chase him. I think that had effect on the outcome and the fact that they couldn't reach a unanimous verdict. And so if there is going to be another trial, we're going to be asking the Court of Appeals to decide whether officer-created jeopardy is something that should apply in a criminal case, and whether officers, if they make any negligent act early on, they can no longer defend themselves if someone turns on them with a dangerous weapon.
And certainly, so that was one of the more important points, of course, of what he had to say, kind of contextualizing what they were going to do if there is a retrial. Again, we don't know. The prosecutor still has to decide. He said today he's not made a decision yet, but if there is to be a retrial, the defense will probably seek some appellate ruling or rulings when it comes to some of what we heard in this trial and whether or not that's allowed in another trial. But certainly a number of different important points there, Julia, and it's important to ram home just how he's not the only person we heard that from when it comes to this is not winners or losers. I mean, we heard from people on the street all throughout the week and a half. I mean, we heard from people if they took a support or not. People were saying, we were just hoping that the community would find a way forward through this, and a man died. And so this is serious. And so whatever the community is going to need to do to find a way forward. People were hoping that'll be the case regardless of what the prosecutor decides to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a happy situation, no matter how you look at it or which way that you feel. Obviously a very tragic one. I'm going to come back to you guys in just a moment, but another part of the story that we want to make sure to touch on is that the outcome of the trial wasn't what, of course, the family of Patrick Lyoya had hoped for. As 13 on Your Side's Lauren Baker learned after that decision was made in court through an interpreter, the family said they're not giving up until they get justice for their son.
After years of hopes and prayers,
to see that all these 3 years where we have been waiting for this case to be settled.
the family of Patrick Lyoya says a mistrial in the Christopher Schurr case has reopened past wounds.
I want to say that it hurt my family, my wife. We are bleeding. We are in pain.
Through an interpreter, the family spoke moments after the judge declared the mistrial in a press conference. Not only wanting justice, Lyoya's mom says her family was hoping Schurr would apologize for what happened when he took the stand.
I thought he would say, coming from his mouth, was going to say, I'm sorry to the family, to apologize for what he did wrong, but he didn't. And it seemed like the way that he portrayed himself, it was like he had no remorse. He had no guilt. He didn't care.
But with the potential of another trial, Lyoya's parents say this outcome won't stop them from fighting for justice for their son.
We are not going to be tired. I didn't give up on my son. And we are not going to be tired until when we find the justice for our son.
And we've had several of you at home reach out about this, why we haven't heard from Schurr's family in our newscast today. We were not able to speak with any family of Schurr's. They left the courtroom very quickly after the trial was ruled a mistrial. We have reached out to the family to see if they'd like to comment on everything that happened today. Of course, if we hear from them, we will let you know as soon as we do. The Lyoya family, meanwhile, still has a civil lawsuit against Christopher Schurr. Their attorney, Ben Johnson, who you saw in those clips there, says he does expect movement in that case to begin soon. That's a totally separate case from the one that we saw come to a conclusion, at least temporarily, today. We're going to pick it back up with our crews out in the field. With the jury unable to reach a verdict, many questions remain, as Callie was alluding to, about what sort of happens next. 13 on Your Side's Riley Mack joins us now alongside Josh and Callie with reaction from inside the courtroom after that verdict was announced, and a closer look at where we go from here. Riley.
Yeah, Julia, you could feel the tension in the courtroom this morning as Judge Christina Mims said to, all of the loved ones and family in that room that this trial was over, that this jury had a roadblock and they could not reach a decision. I was watching the reactions of, Patrick Lyoya's family and Christopher Schurr and Christopher Schurr's family, and you could visibly see, it was kind of a quiet resignation that this case would not have a verdict. When she said it was a mistrial, it was just, you could feel that tension in the room, that kind of sadness that this was not going to have an outcome here. And I also spoke to an expert, a trial attorney who was actually just trying a case today at the courthouse when I met up with him for an interview. And I asked him to kind of explain what this all means. And he explained a hung jury to me, which is, you need that 12-person unanimous decision in order to have a verdict. We don't know in this case how many people were holding out on one side versus the other. We don't know that yet, but it really would just take one person to say, no, I don't agree with the group here, to have a hung jury. And that was, we had a hung jury in this case. He also explained to me, I asked him, what happens with Christopher Schurr now? Is he innocent? Is he guilty? And he explained to me that he is innocent. Until he is proven guilty in a court of law, he is innocent, no matter what. He has been innocent throughout this whole trial. He is innocent before that. Until we have that proven verdict, he is innocent. And he also spoke to me, about the community reaction after this. I asked him, what do you foresee the community feeling about our justice system after this? And he had such a wonderful answer that I'm still thinking about, because for us who have been at the courthouse every day for this trial, it can be a little frustrating that we have no clear answer of the outcome on this case, but he gave such a wonderful response, so we can play that clip here.
I think they should have a positive takeaway from it. This is how our system is designed to work, and so even if there is just one holdout, well, that's the system, and that's the system our forefathers gave to us, and we're blessed to have gotten it from him. So I'm happy when it works like this. It's just the way it works.
I just love that answer. I think, and he was very excited about, to talk about democracy. He even got a little choked up when he talked about how this is part of democracy. This is how it works. The people's opinion matters so much in the court that even one person can stall an entire case that was years of work, Yeah, it was just I thought that really was such a great response. I was also inside the courtroom when a family member, a supporter of the Loyola family, kind of spoke out after Judge Mims declared this would be a mistrial, and he said that bias was the reason for this jury deadlock. After which one of the 9 deputies in that really small courtroom escorted him out of the courtroom, but he spoke up on that in court, and looking at the jury demographics, most of the members were white, and 3 of them did have connections to law enforcement, and they spoke up about that during jury selection, whether it be through their job or their family members. But we heard from the prosecution and the defense today whether that was a factor in this jury deadlock, whether jury bias could have been a factor in it, and both of them said likely not. They believe that they picked the best jury that they could have in this case, and ultimately this was the outcome for it.
Riley, I really appreciate you breaking that down. And for the 3 of you, you guys have been there almost every single day since last Monday. This was day 9 of being there at the courthouse for the 3 of you. I know this has been, a long process, and we only played, some short clips from what we heard from the defense and prosecution today. But from any of the 3 of you, anything else that really stood out about what we heard? This was the first time we heard from, the defense and prosecution since a verdict. Anything else that stood out in the press conferences that they gave today? Feel free, any of you, to pick it up from there.
A big topic of conversation during the press conference was, some of the things that both attorneys said, prosecutor and the defense attorney said they're not going to comment on specifics. They're going to keep that close to chest, even though Borgula did talk about, what way the jury was swaying. But it was talked about what are they deadlocked on, and it was the taser, and kind of, are we looking at the totality of the circumstances or just the final moments of that video? So that stuck with me because that's what we've been saying throughout this whole entire trial, how the jury is going to have to reconcile experts from one side and experts from the other, kind of having this contradictory testimony up there on the stand over these 2 things, and that's what came down to this deadlocked jury. So again, you can't be in the jury's heads, but us just talking about the case over the past 2 weeks, I guess it was kind of like we were on the right track. We kind of knew what was going to happen here, and it ended up kind of the way that no one quite wanted, but it was almost like an expected outcome having this hung jury today.
I think one thing that really stuck out to me were some of the comments about, the jury and how much, what the prosecutor felt was the thought that they put into this. You heard a lot of frustration, it seemed like today, or you felt a lot of frustration about not having a verdict one way or the other, but the prosecutor really got up there and said, they were asking many different questions. They were asking good questions. They were taking, I believe he said, more notes than he's pretty much ever seen a jury take before. And you kind of got that from the last 2 weeks. We saw the kind of questions ourselves that the jury was actually asking, and they were very in-depth questions. You could tell that this jury was paying attention. So, I think that kind of, it speaks to sort of the balancing out. Yes, there is a lot of what you feel to be this frustration that there is not a verdict one way or another at this time. But at the same time, he got up there and said, I could tell, and I think other people maybe have been able to tell, the jury was paying attention. The jury was trying to really dig into this case. So, we don't know what every individual juror was thinking, but that just stuck out to me because of the dichotomy between the frustration and at the same time what some felt was the appreciation for the attention that the jury did pay to this before coming out to that decision that we cannot come to a decision. That stuck out to me.
And if you guys don't mind, Riley, before...
Yeah, I would also...
Yep, take it away. Nope, go Go ahead.
Go ahead, please. Oh,
I just
okay.
had a question.
Yes, just to add on to that. You go ahead, Julia.
Just one quick question for you guys when it comes to just what Josh was talking about there. You know, a lot of people have questions about, you know, how, you know, was this a 6-6 split, or, you know, who were these jurors? You know, what exactly was the holdup? And, you know, there was some of that information alluded to today, but, you know, there's a lot of privacy surrounding the jury, of course, intentionally. Josh, could you speak to that, or Riley, feel free to take it away just on, you know, why that is, and the fact that, you know, we won't know exactly, you know, what the nitty-gritty of how we came here exactly was.
I think that if Riley has anything to add to this side, I'd let her do that just after this. But I know that during what the lead defense attorney Matt Borgula had to say, you know, he was kind of the only one that kind of offered a little bit more insight, because when Becker kind of got into this, he was kind of alluding to, you know, yes, I got some communication from the jury, but I'm not really going to get into that because that was told to us in confidence. But then you had Borgula get up there and claim that, you know, from the communication they received, he felt that many were leaning towards an acquittal, but not entirely there. So that's kind of the biggest details that we got. But just as you were saying, and Riley, if you'd like to add to this, please do, but just as you were saying, there was so much secrecy around this, so much effort put into sequestering the jury from the general scene. I mean, like, every day you heard Judge Mims basically say, you know, don't read news reports, don't do any of these actions that may, you know, bring in outside influence outside of the evidence that you've been presented in this courtroom. So other than that that claim that Borgula made today, I mean, as you're saying, yes, we don't know. We don't know how many jurors were leaning one way or the other, because it was a very, very secretive process for a very deliberate reason. I mean, I'm sure that's very common among trials as a whole, but especially in this case with how high profile it was. What you could tell, there is a lot of effort to keep this jury, you know, under that sequestered status, so that they can focus on only what was presented to them in court, so that it was, to the best of people's ability, a fair trial.
Yeah, I would love to speak on that. Just, you know, I think for very good reason, like you said, this was all very secretive. And people feel very strongly about this case. Right now, even, we can hear the protesters screaming, you know, no justice, no peace right now. And, you know, people feel very strongly. I can't imagine how hard it must have been to be a jury on this case, to try to not let bias impact you when this case was, you know, everywhere. This is a very divisive case for the city of Grand Rapids. But I think both of the attorneys and the judge spoke on how appreciative they were to the jury. You know, the attorneys spoke on them and called them fair. They called them, you know, balanced. They said that they really did not let bias impact them. And I think we have this image in our head of, like, how a hung jury must be, you know, arguing at each other, yelling at each other. Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker said absolutely not. This was a very kind group who were, you know, listening to each other and allowing those other opinions to happen. So it sounds like they really had a good group that, you know, were able to take other opinions into consideration.
Riley, Josh, and Callie, I so appreciate your time. We are going to send things over in a moment to our Kiara Patterson, who's at those protests that you're hearing. But Callie, Josh, Riley, thank you so much for all of your really poignant coverage over the last 2 weeks. I really appreciate it. We're going to toss things now back to 13 on Your Side's Kiara Patterson, who's walking with those protesters. They're marching behind her right now. Kiara, we checked back in with you about 20 minutes ago. What are you seeing now?
Yeah, hey Julia, emotions are so high right now. As you can see behind me, protesters are still here. They just made a lap around the city of downtown here, Grand Rapids. Protesters are gathered, marching, making their voices heard with chants and shouts. Demonstrators that are here are in support of Patrick Lyoya, expressing disappointment with the mistrial. They've been chanting for justice, showing solidarity, and demanding accountability. Many say they're standing up for what they believe is the right and the value of Black lives. They're also calls to push to fix what some describe as a broken system. The message from the crowd is clear. They want action, not silence. And right now, they're all gathered here back at the Kent County Courthouse. And there are also police officers here that are on bicycles trying to rally in the crowd to make sure they're on the sidewalk. We were walking with them for the last probably 20-30 minutes or so, and the chants could be heard from all over downtown. There really is some sort of civil unrest from what they're saying here downtown in Grand Rapids. But for live right now in Grand Rapids, I'm Kiara Patterson. We'll have more on this story at 11.
Kiara, thank you so much. I really appreciate that insight. As you saw there, it looks to be at least 100 people that are walking in the downtown area right now, marching with drums and with signs and with their chants. We have seen protesters or demonstrators, kind of a mix of both, since this trial started last Monday. And we did see some folks outside earlier today when that mistrial was declared. But ultimately, what our Micah Cho was reporting on in just the last couple of hours, really not a huge showing of support on either side throughout the day today. And then the sort of demonstration that Kiara was just showing you, that just started around 5 o'clock tonight and has sort of ramped up with how many people. So again, Kiara is going to continue to cover that story over the next couple of hours, and then she will have a full look for us tonight at 11 o'clock. I'm also going to be working on sort of putting a bow on what we saw happen today for 11 o'clock tonight. And so everything that you heard from Josh and from Callie and from Riley, I'll sort of be putting all of that together for you to get a recap. But of course, we have done extensive coverage over the last 2 weeks on everything. So if you'd like to look back on any moments of testimony, everything can be found right here on 13 Plus. You can see the recaps we've been doing on Morning and Evening Plus. Everything is also up on our website if you'd like to break anything down. So really, we have covered every single moment for you if you would like to return back. And of course, this situation is not over, as we've heard from Callie and Josh. We're at this point of a mistrial, which means that former Officer Schurr is still considered innocent. And we're waiting on that decision from Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker on whether the case will be dropped altogether, whether we'll see some sort of a plea agreement, which we don't know what exactly that could entail. That could be a lesser charge, or, we could see this case retried, which means we really would start from square one like we did last Monday and see this whole process go over again. Prosecutor Becker told us today that, we're not going to see a decision today. It's going to take some time. Obviously, it's a huge decision. So we will, of course, wait to see. Also, another detail from today, after that judge declared a mistrial, the Fraternal Order of Police released a statement. Take a look here. It said, the result reflects the reality that reasonable people can and do disagree when evaluating an officer's actions under extreme pressure. Officer Schurr responded according to his training during a rapidly escalating encounter. The ability of the jury to reach a unanimous decision underscores the uncertainty and controversy surrounding the charges brought against him. The statement did go on to say that they believe the prosecution was unjust and driven more by public pressure than a fair assessment of law and evidence. And we heard to that point from Prosecutor Becker today that this was never a politically motivated charge situation, pressing these charges against former Officer Schurr, that this was about what he felt was right in the situation and what was warranted given the situation. So again, if you'd like to listen back to any of that, we have that up now. As far as Evening Plus goes, tomorrow we will be sort of getting back into our normal swing of things. We've been focusing exclusively on the trial since last Monday, but we will be heading back to sort of looking at your daily local stories, slipping in some fun, some weather, and having guests here in studio. So I so appreciate you sticking with us here on Evening Plus as we have really continued to dive into this coverage. And of course, if we were to see a trial happen again, we would likely dedicate this half hour to, that extended coverage as well. So thank you so much for joining us here on Evening Plus tonight. I hope you have a great rest of your night. Stay safe, and we will see you back here at 6:30 tomorrow on Evening Plus. Have a great night, everyone.